There we go. I see us. That means we're live. All right.
Let's go. I'm getting better at it.
What's up, nerds? I mean, yeah, for sure. What's up, nerds, and welcome back to Heroes Never Die, your one-stop spot for all things competitive Overwatch and Overwatch 2. If you're listening to us tonight for our live show, thank you so much for joining us over on YouTube. And of course, we want to thank all of our listeners out there who are listening on the audio format of the podcast. I, of course, am your host, Emily Drunk, and we are back after taking a week off because it's honestly like we're kind of like in that cycle right now. Not a whole lot going on since our prior episode, but we had a couple of like pretty big topics that we definitely wanted to talk about now that we've had a little bit more time to digest like some of the stuff that's going on with like the Netties and like Blizzard China ordeal that we'd previously talked about. We also had a pretty big news article that was posted by Jacob Wolf in regards to the Overwatch League and a collective bargain agreement, which paints a pretty bleak picture in regards to league infrastructure, future of the league, things like that. Of course, we'll get into that here later on tonight. But joining me tonight, as always, is my co-host Spyder. And Spyder, man, like it's definitely been a week. um, there's a lot of inner turmoil, both on the Overwatch 2 front as well as competitive Overwatch. We've kind of had a couple of like small things, which kind of felt like more uh dangling a carrot on a stick in regards to like this interview that we'll be talking about that happened with NME and Aaron Color, where it's like, yeah, like, things are taking a little while, but, we felt we made the right decision when it comes to, like, staggering the release for Overwatch 2 PvP and PvE. And it's just like, man, like, everything right now just kind of feels like a gut punch.
Yeah, I mean, we heard that line for 3 years. So at this point, that's not going to buy you a whole lot of sympathy when you're saying, "Yeah, we made a good choice," but we don't have anything to really talk about yet. Especially coming upon the first season that is like a content drought, essentially,
Mm-hmm.
because this is going to be the first season we don't get a hero. Supposedly, we're going to get a new map, but maps, I don't know, like maps aren't that exciting to me. Like Shambali Monastery is cool, but the fact that I play Colosseo like 7 out of 9 maps, it doesn't. Shambali Monastery doesn't matter to me then because I'm stuck on Colosseo. So I was a little disappointed. Like we'll go through the full interview as our as part of the show because like you said, we don't have a whole lot to talk about, but we have a couple very like dense subjects. So
Mm-hmm.
like you said, it's been a week, man. The battle for Olympus is wrapping up, which is all right. Like it definitely got old very fast. I never grinded out a title. Like I got close to the Farah one. I think I got like halfway
Mm-hmm.
there if you consider that close.
And then you probably saw the news that the eliminate like environmental eliminations weren't happening, and then Farah was basically going to be out of the running for winning the statue, and then you're like, "F this, I'm out."
Yeah, exactly. I did try Lucio. Lucio was fun.
Mhm.
It was all right for what it is for like the little mini event. And then right on top of that, we got our other event this week, the Lunar New Year. Again, I'm gonna dub that a mini event because we'll talk about it in a bit. But I honestly haven't played a whole lot of Overwatch. Like I've dipped my toes back in like every couple of days. I'll go in and play a couple of matches. But I'm kind of just waiting for those Roadhog changes at this point because I'm
Mhm.
tired of playing against Roadhog. Um, you know, at our level, Roadhog's always been a menace, but now that he's so strong, he's just beyond a menace because at least most tank players I end up with, don't play anything to counter him. So
Mhm.
it's I don't know. It just stopped being fun playing against a Roadhog every game, unless I lock tank, and then I would play Junker Queen, and we would maybe win, but I'd have fun the whole time because Junker Queen's just a really fun hero to play. Regardless of how much the team screams at me like, "Oh, get off of Junker Queen, she's terrible," and I'm like, "No, you're terrible." Because
Mhm.
it's definitely not me charging into the back line and the Roadhog walking past me and killing 3 people. But other than that, it's I enjoyed my week off, but I am happy to be back, and we do have some news, so I guess we should probably hop into it.
Absolutely. So, just as a reminder, if you guys are looking to keep in contact with us, you can find us over on Twitter at HND Overwatch. You can find all of our video content over on YouTube. I would just add Overwatch League Network. And of course, as always, you can find us over in our community Discord at discord.me/OWLN show. Now, that being said, yeah, we're going to bounce around a little bit, but we do kind of have like our two main topics, which had already been mentioned earlier in the show. But let's talk about a couple of the recent free agency moves in regards to the Overwatch League. We got a little bit of movement, but not a ton. But the movements that we did get, at least for the sign-ins, were definitely of note for both of these teams. So let's start with the Los Angeles Gladiators, who have officially at this point released Space. And then earlier today, they have recorded, they have found their new tank player in Dante. Dante basically tweeting out, he kind of had like a short list of destinations that he wanted to go to in regards to the Overwatch League. LA Gladiators being among them. He didn't really specify who else was on the short list for that matter. But he found a new home in Los Angeles, and one of the big questions, at least in Dante's perspective, and us as communities, like, well, is he gonna go back to DPS or is he gonna fully commit to being a tank at this point? And of course, on the graphic, you can see, in fact, that he was signed as their new tank player entering the 2023 season. And like I have to say, like all in all, he went to a solid team at the end of the day, and that's one of the big things. And I know, if we're talking about like fan bases, obviously the Outlaws have one of the more I don't want to say one of the top earners, even though that might actually be the case. If we're
Rabid.
talking about pure money. uh, but they are definitely a rabid fan base, and the Gladiators are definitely one of the more popular teams outside of Houston in the league. So it's going to be interesting to see just how he fits into the Gladiators, because I know there were definitely ups and downs with Rainier last year, and a lot of people are kind of looking at this as maybe more of a ladder movement in regards to the tank position as a whole. But, for the most part, Dante has proven to be more than a capable tank in his own right. And, he's definitely spent enough time on picking up this role where, being a DPS player in the league at this point feels like an afterthought for sure.
It's I mean, it's interesting that he would stick with tank, but we did see a lot of promising stuff out of him last year. Really, the only shortcoming he had was Winston at the end of the season, and even that wasn't bad. I mean, it was serviceable. It just wasn't like playoff winning Winston, I guess, at that point. Like, it wasn't up to the standard of his other tanks, which is really interesting to talk about. He seems to know how to make space. He tank in Overwatch 2 is a lot more I I don't know, aggressive, I guess is a good way to put it. Like, you don't do as much peeling. Like, there is some aspect of peeling, but for the most instance, you're trying to push into the team, take space, get advantages in angles, fights, stuff like that. If you're in the current meta, get picks. But
Mhm.
I think Dante could be really good because him going on to tank last season seemed like like a last minute thing. Like, it was the thing that Houston kind of threw him in, and it did okay for the Doomfist, and then they struggled with other people on tank, so they put him back in at tank, and he just kind of continually grinded his way until he was essentially a tank player at that point. And I think given time, Dante has shown to be probably one of the most flexible DPS players we've ever had in the league. I mean, he can play almost any hero. So the fact that he's this good on tank this quickly doesn't surprise me. So at the end of the day, I think he could be, like you said, it's kind of a lateral movement, but he could actually be an upgrade down the line because one thing Gladiator struggled with in the past is Reiner and Space had to split tanking duties depending on the map and the meta. But Dante is shown to kind of be almost meta proof. in a way. So I think having a core central roster, if anything, in Overwatch 2 has showed us that is kind of the way to go. Whereas flopping back and forth, even for like King of the Hill maps and stuff like that, hasn't worked as well in this new iteration of the game. So I think this is a good look for the Gladiators. I'm curious to see what some of the other pieces are. I mean, we know Kevster is their primary DPS. We know they have two supports. So, who is that last DPS going to be? And I think that's going to answer a lot of questions for me. But,
Hmm.
traditionally, Gladiators will support the team. Like they're not one of the teams that will, they won't Paris Eternal it or Vegas Eternal it, and
Hmm.
sign a team and then leave them out to dry. So this they're going to get a lot of support, and Dante's going to get a lot of coaching. Hunter's still there, so I think at the end of the day, um, it's a good signing.
Hmm.
And if they sign another tank, he could always flex back to DPS. And you imagine Kevster and Dante as a DPS line, dude. Like they could just switch heroes whenever they want, and they'd be fine.
Absolutely. Man, my sinuses are acting up, so my eyes keep watering. So I'm trying my best not to like start crying on the podcast. But anyways, outside of that,
I love Dante too, but you got to
yeah, I
hold it
mean,
back, buddy.
just I'm so emotional. Outside of that, we also have our first sign in for the Soul Dynasty, or re-sign in this case, because this is the only player currently on the active roster. Obviously, my big question mark is going to be, well, Prophet's a free agent. Where the fuck's is going to wind up? And turns out he's back with the Soul Dynasty after all this talk. Like I was holding out hope that maybe, the Dallas Fuel were going to throw big money, around on the table, be like, man, we need our playoff profit. Playoffs didn't really go the way that, we were expecting. And sure enough, he's back with Soul Dynasty, which, it makes sense. At the end of the day for the Dynasty, Prophet was like your big sign in of the past. He's been someone who has basically been with the league since the start. He's one of like the few, it's like 4 or 5 players at this point who have officially been with the Overwatch League from the start of the league up to signing for the current year. And there's only like maybe like 9 or 10 people who had basically played from the first season through this past season on top of that. But Prophet has been kind of like the old reliable in regards to just where he is in regards to his level of play. And we have definitely seen him in the past flex to different roles, maybe not to the same extent of Dante, but it seems like Prophet is kind of like the in case of Glass like Switch in regards to like these
Hmm.
team compositions, which is always something to interest in. Because it's one of those things that really makes or breaks you. Because there's definitely been times where he picks something up really quick, but there's other times where he just plays really over aggressive, and there are times when that just gets outright punished. Kind of like what we kind of saw with some of the Kiriko play in some cases
The
this
flank
past
Kiriko.
season. But like for Prophet fans out there, at least you can breathe easier knowing that he is on a team. But obviously, like, still so much uncertainty in regards to like some of these APAC teams because still up to this point haven't really seen a ton of movement outside of the Fusion rebrand, which of course we talked about on a prior episode
Hmm.
with the secondary Soul team. So it's just like at this point, it's really weird trying to get in that mindset of like, oh yeah, we do have two uh Soul teams at this point. One of them is like more entrenched, which feels weird because that team is
Yeah.
not the dynasty at this point. So like as a dynasty fan, I'm starting to get a little bit nervous, like, oh shit, like what's actually
But
going on? But this is the first step, at least.
what do you mean first step? Like this is it. This is their team. This is the whole team. They have
We're just
signed
gonna
Prophet
throw
five
profit.
times.
Yeah.
They have tried moving him around to different roles, and they have
Hmm.
come to the conclusion that it is the other players that are getting in his way. So it is just going to be Prophet solo carry. Like as funny as that is, um, impossible because of league contracts. It somebody at the dynasty was like, well, what if just Prophet played? Like, it's I don't know. It's not out of the realm of possibility, is what I'm getting at. But
They're,
I'm glad
maybe
to.
maybe they're trying to do like the thing where it's like 5 bronze players versus a grandmaster. So like
Yeah,
they'll just play Prophet versus whatever
but they'll
roster
buff
the
up his.
Excelsior end up coming up with. You know.
They'll buff up his stats. He'll have 5 times the stats, so he'll just run out on like a Roadhog, and he'll just one shot people across the map.
Yep.
Um, who knows? But I'm glad to see that they re-signed Prophet. At this point, even though I know he started at London, Seoul has been his home for so long. I feel like he just fits in Seoul. Um, I guess I should say the dynasty at this point. I have to
Hmm.
clarify. That's going to be a pain in the ass. But yeah, at the end of the day, I'm happy Prophet's around. Like I can't really go into it like I did with Dante because we don't know. We like you said, we don't know what the rest of the pieces are. Like they
Hmm.
could literally pull 4 people off the street. Because we've seen it before. We've seen teams pick up ladder heroes. So
Hmm.
we'll see how it happens. But I am curious to see what kind of team they build around Prophet at this point.
Absolutely. Now, outside of that, of course, not a whole lot happening on the Overwatch 2 front. We have had some events going on. One of which was streamed here recently, which was definitely something that has had a lot of discussion in regards to well, how good are console players? And obviously the PC gamers are always trashing like, oh, well, you wouldn't be good if you didn't have aim assist. So what ended up happening this past week was we had a PC versus console showdown going on, which was I want to say J3 was the one
Yeah, it
who
was
was
J3.
putting this on. So you had basically like the top like Xbox team going up against one of the contenders teams
Hmm.
to finally put this argument to rest, or just see how things
Reinforce
play
the
out. and
stereotype.
and I didn't catch all of this because of when it was streamed and I was doing other stuff. But I remember watching like the first map, and of course it was on control. And I was like, okay, let's see how like the console players are gonna do. Because initially, of course, being PC Master Race, I'm like, they're just gonna get smoked. Like, there's no way. And then we're like 5 minutes in on Oasis, and there's not been a single death. And I was like,
Yeah.
what the hell is going on? Like, I did not expect it to be like at that level. It felt like we were
Hmm.
in a goats meta at this point in time. But long story short, at the end of the day, it was Team PC picking up the win with a score line of 3-1 in this series. It was the first of three. Um, but it definitely felt like after this event, there was a lot more respect stamped on the name for console players, at
Hmm.
least from the PC side of the argument. And when it comes to like these streamed events, like we're always looking for, you know, what sort of like content are people producing? And this is one that has been back and forth for such a long time. It's not specific just to like Overwatch. It's always been the case when it comes to, shooters in general. And, for the most part, there's always been a more negative stigma, I would say, in regards to playing on console, just because of the way that aim assist works. So, to see them come in and, really hold their own, definitely is worth merit. And it just shows you like it's not just a bunch of like kids playing on console, although that is true to an extent, especially now that we're in a free to play situation with Overwatch. um but it was really cool just to see something a lot more structured for the console side, because that is something that really hasn't necessarily been that much of a thing outside of a couple of organized leagues for Overwatch at the console level. But even like those didn't really pick up a ton of momentum over the years either. So we didn't really get to see them like fully pan out and fleshed out.
Much like the Overwatch League. Um, but but no, yeah, we'll get to that later. But if you haven't seen this stream, it was J3. It was actually very entertaining to watch. And it was 3-1, but it was a lot closer than that scoreline kind of makes you believe. The console players did hold their own, but there were definitely times like you could see like they would struggle with certain aspects of like
Mhm.
pharmacy and stuff like that. So it you know it was really entertaining, and I do hope they bring it back. You know Wisp is a good team, like they're a contenders level team, but imagine putting this team against like O2 Blast or
Mhm.
some of like the upper echelons of mouse and keyboard, and I think the results would be a little different. But the whole argument is interesting because um, Apex actually has a lot of like controller users because of aim assist, and there are mouse and keyboard players that play in the Apex League that are mad at controller players, and most teams have actually adopted like a two PC one controller user, like two mouse and keyboard one controller user, and they have like different setups. So like the controller user is like their I don't want to say fragger, but more of like the SMG and type of thing because they can actually control it better. I don't think it's
Hmm.
SMG. I think it's the 301, but and it changes based on patch. But
Mhm.
like that, it's much more ingrained in Apex than it is in Overwatch. It surprises me that we haven't seen more controller users break into Overwatch. Um, but I feel like that's on purpose just because of the way Blizzard handles aim assist, and they're trying to keep it very PC focused. The Iron Grip, but overall, like this, circling back around, this event was interesting to see. I do want to see, like J3 said, he's going to do more of this, and he came away with like a newfound respect for console because he went into it kind of like you did. Like he was like
Mhm.
clowning on them. He's like, these kids are going to get dunked on. Like these are, this is a contenders team. Like they're just going to smoke them with like Widowmaker. Like in they struggled, like you said, like throughout all the maps. There were certain times when the PC team had to come up with solutions to what the console team was throwing at them. Like they couldn't just rest on their laurels and just play Widowmaker or Pharmacy and stuff like that. Like they had to adjust comps and actually surprise play the game. So it was really fun to watch. I would definitely check it out. Check out map 1 and then check out map 3. Those two are really good. If you want to see the lone console map, it is map 2. It is Hollywood. That's the one they won. But 1 and 3 are really good maps. So
Mhm.
yeah, it was fun to watch, and this is the kind of content we need. Thinking a little bit outside the box, or
Yeah.
Xbox,
Mhm.
whatever.
They turn around and that's why they called it a 360, even though you're only going 180. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah.
But we need content out there because right now there's just, man, it's rough out there. It's like, yeah, we got a new seasonal event with Lunar New Year. Yeah, let's celebrate the fact that Blizzard China basically dissolved with the release of the Chinese New Year event
Do
in
you know how they
Overwatch
celebrated
2.
it? With
Yeah.
with like two new skins and a rehash of old skins.
Yeah,
Really?
like it's very disappointed. Like when I logged in for Lunar New Year, I was like, oh, let me see what they added, and then I just sat there at like the login screen that tells you, like, oh, hey, like we got some new game modes returning. You saw like a couple of skins on there. You can see like what the souvenir, the weapon charm, the free skin that we get, and you're just looking at it and you're like, well, this is just a rehash of basically all the shit from prior years.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, that is exactly the case. And I'm like, ugh,
Hey,
I'm not surprised, just disappointed.
I'm
you
not
know?
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
hmm
Hey, we got a new May skin. I'm not gonna buy it, even as a May player, because there's
hmm
way better May skins.
That's
But
true.
um, I the look, I don't like any of the events. Like capture the flag in Overwatch has always been weird to me because they
hmm
restrict um, movement abilities. Now, capture the flag blitz is actually fun for a little bit. Like that is, I would put that on par with like Battle of Olympus. Like I could have some fun in that for a certain amount of time because it is like super fast paced games. Um,
hmm
but regular capture the flag, I don't enjoy in Overwatch. Uh, the bounty hunter like game mode is okay, but I don't know what it is, but the wait for me has been insane. Like I try to play that game, and it's like a 6 to 7 minute wait. So I don't
It's
know if
probably because people log in, realize that there's nothing new, and they're like, "All right, on to the next." You know, it's probably what it is, to be
yeah,
honest.
but the I am gonna give one upside to this. And the one upside I will give to this is I don't like that the event quests are tied to an old skin. Like that should
Mhm.
be a new skin. But I do like that they're introducing old skins through Twitch drops. Like I think
Mhm.
that's a good way for people to come back and get skins they may have missed and not pay $20 for them. Like I think that is a positive. Like that is the lone positive I have for this event. The rest of it is it's bad. Like it's just
Because on the skin front, there have been a lot of times already where we have seen recycled skins,
hmm
primarily revolving in the shop rotation.
right. So the fact that you can get that one for free is cool. And if you already have it, you're not losing out on anything. Like you don't have to watch the Twitch streams. You don't have to do
Mhm.
anything. You're not forced to play like a whole bunch of games and get a crappy skin on the way to a new skin. Like I liked that. Like bringing the old skins back that way was good for me. But the rest
Mhm.
of the event is like I said is bad. Like I used like even during the content drought, right? I would log in every event, get my free loot box, look at all
Mhm.
the new skins, be like, oh, that one's really cool. Play a couple of arcade games to get a couple of loot boxes, see if I got, a cool skin, and then, you know, maybe never touch it again till the next event.
Mhm.
But that engagement is still more than this event drives me to. Like, I am, for the most part, I was enjoying Overwatch 2 until, I just got tired of Roadhog, but I have been enjoying Overwatch 2.
Mhm.
But these events, man, if this is what you're banking on, if you're banking on keeping players with these events and the battle pass, it's not going to work, man.
Mhm.
You got every other live service game just stomping you into the ground with better content. I mean, even Apex has taken a lot of shit recently, a lot of crap recently. Can't say that on YouTube now. Um, taken a lot of crap recently with the staleness of it. But
Mhm.
even Apex's events come out with like new limited time modes, and the skins are also expensive. But if you've seen the money video, that's market average. Like I don't like it, but I can't fault people for doing
Mhm.
it. But even they are getting like hounded for stale content, and they are doing double of what Blizzard is. Fortnite comes out with a new event like every other week. Genshin Impact, if you're a weeb, has events running all the freaking time.
Mhm.
Also, we didn't talk about this, but did you see Gushui's Genshin Impact photo shoot?
No, I did not.
It is he is a handsome woman. I'll just put it that way. Um, but yeah, check out Goose's Genshin photo shoot. But yeah, like to the live service thing. This is I hope this is like their last of their growing pains, because as we're gonna talk about here in a second with the interview, it seems like they have a lot of wheels in motion.
Mhm.
And I hope this is the end of those wheels in motion, because we've been dealing with that for almost 4 years at this point, and there's going to come to a point where, and they may already be at it, where people are just not going to come back to check out the game anymore. So,
Yeah, and it's understandable, especially if you are someone who has gone through the cycle of events where you were used to logging in to doing
mhm.
weekly challenges to get your 9 wins to get your free skin every week. Whereas now it's just like, yeah, we might throw in a couple of titles. We'll have some skins that are basically, you can get via the stream or you can buy in the shop. Um, but we still really don't have a lot of reasons to log into the game right now, and that is one of the reasons why queue times are to be so bad for these limited time events. But at the end of the day, like we already had like the bigger event for Battle for Olympus, and I know like not a ton of people really cared for it, at least like the general like pulse of the community seemed like it was kind of like all over the place. But I enjoyed it. I don't always like go out of my way to like play free for all deathmatch, but I do enjoy the mode, and it's a great way to practice, and it's more of like that arcade flavor that we were kind of like promised early on with Overwatch, because it is an arcade shooter at the end of the day. But in regards to having wheels in motion, like at this point, like it's hard for me to picture these wheels not being square, because that's exactly what it's been, because it's still been like a rickety ride
See,
up through
the
this
way
point.
I picture it is they're like wheels spinning really fast, but they're in like
Mhm.
a half a foot of mud.
Oh,
So
okay. Yeah.
they're just spinning, and they're like, look, the wheels are in motion. Yeah, but you're not going anywhere. Like you're not doing anything. Like sure, you're putting in the work, but you're not
Mhm.
getting any result out of it. And this is going to be important when we talk about Overwatch League too. So
Absolutely, yeah. All right, so outside of that, as we mentioned, we also had an interview with Overwatch 2 director Aaron Culler, which was conducted by NME. Basically, talking about what is next for Overwatch 2, some insight on some of the things that are happening, kind of like behind the scene. And, you know, a lot of it boils down to like that difficult decision that they had to make in regard to like releasing Overwatch 2 and getting it out in people's hands. And they're sticking to their guns. The Team Force still feels like they made the right decision with decoupling the PvE content and the PvP. He reiterated the fact that things are taking longer than what they were expecting when it comes to the PvE content, and it seems like right now they are at this point where the way that they are releasing PvE is a decision that has not been fully fleshed out yet. They're trying to figure out how they're going to get it into people's hands. The thing that makes the most sense to me as a consumer, knowing that they have done this in other Blizzard titles, I'm thinking more like StarCraft 2 missions when those were a thing, right? Like you'll have like your first slate of missions that you'll get out. We know like they talked about like big numbers, like, oh yeah, we got hundreds of missions, we're gonna have that replayability factor kind of like baked in, all that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, like we need to have something. We need to see the progression that has been made, because they've been so quiet for so long with the PvE side of the game that when people are getting turned away from the PvP, the only other place they have to turn is to play something else. They're not staying and like dicking around in arcade or playing whatever limited time event is going on at the time. They're just not playing the game outright,
you
and
mean
they're getting their fix elsewhere.
you're not sitting in the 18 plus no kill RP lounges like the rest of us?
Nope, definitely not.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right there. Like it's sad, but they I I looking at this, and we can talk about more specifics, but I really feel like they wanted PvE to come out with season 3. Like I feel like that was their initial goal.
Mhm.
So they never committed to that, and this could be completely wrong. If you work at Blizzard, reach out to us. We'd love to talk to somebody. But um, I feel like they wanted PVE, at least the first set of missions, because I do feel like you're right. I feel like they were going for like that StarCraft mission, or like the co-op campaign is really what I thought of like in
Mhm.
StarCraft 2, because that was piecemeal. You bought a commander, you got that commander, and then you could play through all the co-op missions with it. Like I thought that's what they might do. Like they might bundle it with the battle pass and be like, you can get all the PVE missions for chapter 1 or chapter 0 or whatever the
Mhm.
fuck they're gonna call it. Dang you, YouTube. But I mean, our channel's not monetized anyway, so.
Yeah, yeah,
But in the future, so I feel like that was the route they were going, and this. I talked about it at the top of the show, but this interview was just a whole lot of nothing. Like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, I got to learn how to play the game again. Like, you're the game director. Like, you
Mhm.
should never openly admit that. Like, well,
Especially like in the balance perspective, where
mm-hmm.
everyone has that mindset. They've had this mindset for a while of, do you actually play your game?
Yeah, I mean, Blizzard's taking a lot of crap on that for every
Mhm.
game they have.
That is true.
So, but Yeah, first of all, you should never openly admit that. Second of all, when you're like, "Oh, we've had to make a lot of really tough calls." No, like none of these are tough calls. Like if you if you're building software and it's taking a lot longer, you pivot, branch, and change direction. Like that's basic software development. That's not hard to call. Like the I can tell you 100% the reason it was a hard decision is they haven't figured out how to monetize it yet. Like
Mm-hmm.
that is 100% the reason they haven't done this yet. Um, it is not like we're struggling to create things. We're struggling, to figure systems out. Like Blizzard's always been really good at that stuff. Sure, they've taken their time in history, but they've figured it out and they've gotten stuff out the door in a reasonable amount of time. Like even World of Warcraft and its long, gestation periods between expansion packs. They've at least kept communication. Like Overwatch is like a whole different beast, and I don't know if it's like just internal strife or like turmoil and monetization, but something fundamentally is wrong are stopping Overwatch from being what it can be. And again, this is going to come back in the Overwatch League conversation. But this whole article, like I don't know, like I almost would have been better off him not doing this article. Like I it was just weird because like 2 weeks ago I'm like, you guys need to tell us more stuff. You need to give us all the information. But if this is the information you're going to give us, you're kind of like shooting yourself in the foot. Like you're just giving us bad information. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, they're I don't know, like good good idea, bad execution. I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, it basically confirms at this point that, at the end of the day, it's always about monetization because they basically confirm outright, like, hey, like, we plan on releasing this content gradually, starting later in the year. Um, but we haven't fully fleshed out how we're going to roll this content out to you. Now, there's a number of ways they could do that. They could tie it into the battle pass. They could have it be, another in-game shop option. Maybe they bundle hero missions for specific heroes with like a skin or something. That's another direction that they could potentially take. But at the end of the day, they're always like promising, like, hey, we got like this huge story. It's gonna get fleshed out. We got an overarching narrative that we're gonna be telling you for those people that do want some additional lore within the game and not, via like books or, comics or whatever. Since, the animated shorts are still few and far between at this point. Um, but it's like, yeah, like we know all of this stuff is coming, but it's just a matter of if not like when's it actually happening? Because right now everyone's like still trying to be as patient as they can, just because we went through such a long drought to begin with, and we're already circling back to that point where it's like, it really feels like we are back to square one on that front. It's just like as a big Overwatch player, it's just like, man, like at some point, we're wanting to see the ship direction get righted. But it just seems like things constantly
Hmm.
get prolonged to the point where that goal seems further and further out of reach. It's like it's right. We can see it, but it just we can't actually catch up to that point. But yeah, I think you're right. I think they really wanted to get like that first batch out fairly early in the year, which has not happened as of yet. My hope at this point is they release the first batch in between hero releases, which obviously they also kind of like went into in this interview as well. They did confirm that the next hero releases are going to be support heroes, both for season 4 and I want to say it was season 6. Would have been the next one,
Hmm. That's fair.
which is great news for support players. But at the same time, obviously, like we know about, reworks that are currently in the process of being made. What's that rollout going to be? Is that going to get tied into these other support releases? Is it going to be baked into, kind of like the middle, like just sandwich between the support hero releases? Because as we've talked about, like whenever we do get balance changes, which by the way, with this event patch, we didn't get any. Which
Hmm.
is another thing in its own right. Because we still are waiting on that Roadhog balance patch, which is going to be the bigger balance patch, which, like they even said in this interview, like, yeah, like we realized like having one big balance patch a season isn't enough. So it seems like
No crap.
at times you're saying the right things. Other times it's like that's not what we want to hear as a
It's
consumer.
like
It's like where's the middle ground? Because like there's such a huge disconnect right now where it's just like I don't want to say like I want to reach out and just like rattle them or something, but it's just like it's like you're so close.
you have the tools now. Like I don't understand it. Like in terms of balance, like there may be a couple of bugs affecting like full hot fixable things. Like sure, and in terms of like reworks, that should be the mid balance, like the mid season balance patch. Like if you have a rework or two scheduled, that is when you drop it. You drop it mid season. But for outliers, like we had with Sojourn, like we still have with Sojourn, Roadhog, like he specifically says in this interview, like, sure, we can nerf him into the ground and make him unplayable. Okay, well, 6 weeks
That
into
doesn't
the
accomplish
season,
anything, no.
6 weeks into the season, do it. Like, you have everybody, all skill tiers at this point say like Roadhog is a problem. Okay, well just wait. Like we buffed Orisa. Okay, cool. We've buffed Ana. Okay, cool. That helps, but it doesn't lower his power. Like take a bullet away from him. Like you say you want to do these incremental changes, but you're like, no, we got a full rework scheduled for him. Okay, cool. But that's not going to help us right now. Like in the interim, you could do something to help us. Like their balancing philosophy is, like you said, it's almost there. Like they are so close, and they say they have the tools to do it, but they seem hesitant to do it. Whereas, it especially between seasons, like the big thing I'm gonna hark on is like, and if you watch any streamer, most streamers have talked about this at this point, is like there's not a real season wide meta change from season 1 to season 2. The meta didn't really change at all. Like people were figuring out Roadhog at the end of season 1, and in season 2 nothing changes, and it was basically Roadhog Sojourn, and then it became Roadhog Sojourn Mercy, to just supplement the small Sojourn nerfs. So in between seasons, like they talk about like, well, our big mid season bounce patch. Like, okay, if that's what you consider a big patch, you really need to rethink how you do patches, because like the season patches, you should upend everything so people can distinctly say like season 1 was very different than season 2. And obviously we can't rely on hero releases for that, because we thought Ramattra would come in and change the meta when Ramattra came out and he was a huge piece of turd. Like so, and they had to buff him up until he kind of fit up there, in the not Roadhog tier at this point. So yeah, there's some balancing things. Like if they want to keep things fresh, they're going to have to be a lot more aggressive. And honestly, that would be enough to keep the content fresh, in the interim for this PvE nonsense, like whatever they're going to do to monetize it. But if they're going to be hesitant on that and not put out PvE, like they're just shooting themselves in the foot. Like I don't understand what they're afraid of. Like they're like, oh well, we don't want to change the meta too much. For what? Like why? Like Overwatch League's not going on right now, so everybody's going to log in and be like, oh, here's a patch. Put the patch on the front page. Oh boy, Roadhog's not as good anymore. And suddenly McCree can roll 3 times in the middle of the air. Like, okay, cool. I'm going to try out McCree. And people are going to have fun trying out new combinations to see what works. Because that's always like the most fun, is when you don't know what the meta is. And you get to play a little bit of everything. So, being a little more aggressive, I think, would help them. Is it good for the long-term health of the game? Probably not. But in these like downturn interim times before you start getting, the full content cycle going, because remember, I don't know if anybody remembers this, but Overwatch 2 is still in pre-release. Like they haven't officially released Overwatch 2 yet. Like
it's half the game.
Yeah. So, in this pre-release state, they need to be a little more um lackadaisical with it. Like, just have, like, it's for fun, so have fun with it. Like, am I saying that they should buff and nerf characters into the ground like every week? No, but they can be a little more lenient with it.
Mhm. Yeah, rather than by just having these drawn out periods of time where one person is clearly busted, similar to what we got out of the Sojourn meta. And I was going on with Roadhog in this case. But yeah, on the support front, they did mention like, hey, obviously, we got, two new support heroes out there. We're gonna bring in some new things to the game that we haven't seen before when it comes to like new mechanics for support, which are going to be different in regards to like the way that they interact with your teammates, which interested. We don't know what those abilities are going to be, or if we got teases for the heroes already in game at this point. But at the end of the day, I thought like when Kiriko came out, all of us kind of like had that mindset of great. We got a new support. It's going to help alleviate some of the issues that support players are having. Turns out didn't really make that much of a difference. One, because Kiriko was just outright busted, and obviously her ultimate was the most overpowered ultimate that we've seen in the span of Overwatch in its lifetime. And obviously, we've seen her tone down quite a bit up to this point now. Um, but it's just like, yeah, it's like cool. We came out with a new hero, but then when you talk to a support player out there, it's like, man, we still kind of like feel like our backs are up against the wall. We're getting like put in a box, basically. We're having to play the same heroes, and there's an argument about like one hit kills in Overwatch 2 and the fairness of them. And there's been a lot of discussion in regards to Roadhog on that front, where at least in Roadhog's case, you have to be near Roadhog to actually get hooked. It's not like you're getting sniped from across the map from a Widowmaker, or just getting a random Hanzo headshot or something like that, which happens far more than people would actually care to admit. So at least you actually see Roadhog for the most part when this happens. So yes, in that regard alone, yeah, it is a little bit more fair, but it doesn't make it any less frustrating to deal with at the end of the day. But I think as a support player, obviously like moving to 5v5, having less overall appeal in the game has
Hmm.
definitely upped just the amount of pressure both on the tank for having to be more of a playmaker in this case, but it also means that support players in general just have less support around them
Hmm.
as well. So it's just like there were so many like new things that were put into place, and you're trying to see how things work out, and then you just have like that growing frustration, especially on the support role, where it's like, well, yeah, we're getting some new heroes, but the changes for support across the board, like when you compare them to every other role in the game, have still felt very minuscule, just compared to some of the reworks that we already have seen both at tank and at DPS. But also like when we do get a change, it's like, oh yeah, Mercy has more pistol ammo, and you're just like, well,
Woo!
woo. It's like basically like I don't know who asked for that, but here it is. And it's like other times it's like, yeah, we got a little bit more regeneration whenever we're DPS in this Moira. And I'm like, well, that's great, but you're just kind of like confirm it, like, yeah, like we want you guys as DPS, and you're like, oh great, here comes all the gold DPS Moiras coming in. Like, see, we've been
Yep.
playing her right this entire time. So it's like you're basically like adding to the narrative of like there's only one way to play the character, and it's not the way that Reddit plays.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, the support just feels rough right now. Like, the whole role needs some love. Like, I think every character needs to be touched in one way or another. Um, that sounded really inappropriate, but uh, I do think like there needs to be some changes to the role. I think in Overwatch in general, like Overwatch 2, I think the damage needs to come down across the board. Like, I feel like they need to slow the game down a little bit. I'm fine with certain one-shot mechanics like Widowmaker. maybe Hanzo's debatable, and this is as a person who actually enjoys playing Hanzo. Um, and even those you can slow down to a degree. Like you can make Widowmaker have to scope in longer to get the one shot. You can make Hanzo's draw speed a little slower and stuff like that. Like there are ways to counteract that, but I think damage as a whole needs to come down across the board to encourage more just more counterplay, like just more actual like neutral play. The worry there is if you bring damage down, you put more focus on ultimates, and we go back to like the wombo combo, like grab dragon centric metas where everybody's playing for ultimates and stuff like that. So there is a balancing act there, and that's that's something that they'd have to tweak. But I do feel like damage in Overwatch 2 is a lot higher, and that could just be because it is much more dual focused. But I don't know, like that. I normally have like suggestions and stuff like the support problems definitely like out of my pay grade. Like there's something fundamentally wrong with the support role that just makes it unfun to play anymore. And I used to love playing support, but at this point, like I'd rather just play DPS because if I'm gonna have to duel people, I want the right tools to do it without having a tank scream at me for not healing him around 3 walls. So,
Hmm.
that's I don't know. Like, we'll see how they balance, in the next couple of weeks. But maybe like what can they do to fix the support role might be, a topic we can broach at at a later date.
Hmm. Yeah, like if we don't have major changes with like the Roadhog nerfs at the support role, yeah, that's definitely something to keep an eye on for sure. No, outside of that, obviously, like the two bigger tidbits that we have seen since our last episode were updates on the NetEase extension. Obviously, they had that licensing agreement with Blizzard that had been something that had been going on for years at this point in regards to China. We do have an official update on that. And unfortunately, they failed to negotiate this 6 month contract extension. So basically, what it means is, Blizzard game services in China are going to shut down at this point. They basically dissolved the Blizzard China division. I know like they had posted something about like them tearing down like the orc statue at the at their place, which is kind of interesting to see like them actually like showing that. But this is something that has been going on for a few years now, and obviously there was like that uncertainty about like what this would mean, for competitive Overwatch, especially with the Overwatch League, knowing that there are quite a few Chinese teams as well. I know, and obviously we've like touched up on, the reported plans or the rumored plans of them kind of just being stationed in Korea to potentially play on LAN. Seems like we're still going to be going in that sort of direction. But at the same time, you look at this and then you see like, oh yeah, well, like NetEase is working on a new MMO, and then you see like the cosmetics, and everyone's like, man, it's like they're just directly ripping off of World of Warcraft, and you're like, well, I can't really say that I'm surprised at this point because it is China.
Exactly.
When it comes to like trademarks in China, very very loose. You got the
Yep.
knockoffs, the imitators, and we've already seen it on the Overwatch front
Oh,
multiple
oh,
times,
yeah.
over the years because we've talked about it on the podcast,
Hmm.
for sure. But it's like at this point in time, I can't say I'm surprised by the fact there wasn't a new agreement
Hmm.
reached between the two. It kind of just seemed to be Lumen, like, okay, like shit, like we need to like sort things out. And weren't able to reach an agreement, and obviously, like this isn't like the first licensing deal that has come up recently. It's the same with like YouTube
Yep.
and competitive esports in general for Blizzard Gaming, where at this point it's like we still don't really have an update on what's going on there, outside of like you know the CDL like moving to Twitch again. And obviously we'll touch on that a little bit too with our next topic. But at the end of the day, obviously, there's going to be a lot of discussion in regards to politics when it comes to China. and Blizzard, because obviously that's been a hot button topic for the community over the years, and obviously it was something we saw firsthand at BlizzCon. During like dealing with that because that was a whole ordeal. Um, but the amount of revenue that comes in from the East is something that can't be understated in this
Mm.
case. Having China there, there's ups and downs, but like it's a huge chunk of your player base. So to see that like kind of dissolve, it's just like, okay, well, like where does it leave us now? Like, are they going to try to find another licenses partner for the East? Are they just kind of like going to go their own separate ways, and we'll just kind of like see how things fall? But at the end of the day, it's like it's a big blow, but at the same time, we just need to see like, okay, we got to figure out what this means for the Overwatch League for these Chinese teams, because like right now they're just like, shit, like what the hell are we supposed to do? Because there are
Right.
several teams operating at a loss, which is more clear now than it has ever been because of this next article we're going to be talking about from Jake and Wolf. But it worries me because at this point in time, it's like how many of like these franchises are wanting to back out, but they just
Hmm.
can't.
Yeah, that's definitely where my head's at too. The answer is probably most of them if they've entered a collecting bargaining agreement. But in terms of like the specific like Blizzard NetEase stuff, they this letter from Blizzard China um, tries to paint NetEase as the bad guy, which
Hmm.
don't get me wrong, NetEase is not great. Like Tencent is not great. Like that whole corporation is not great, I guess is the nicest way I can put it. But in this instance, I don't know, everything that we've read about it, everything that's come out about it, it definitely seems like Blizzard is the bad guy here. Like, or at least Activision Bobby Kotick is the bad guy here. Like it definitely, and we talked about this when this first happened. It definitely seems like this is like Bobby's last big payday, and it fell through, and now they're scrambling, and it's gonna hurt everybody. Like it's gonna hurt the players. It's gonna hurt Blizzard as a whole. It's gonna hurt the Overwatch League teams. Like this whole, I don't know, like fiasco money stunt. Like I don't even know what to call it. Head so far up your ass you don't realize that you're actually going to be hurting people when you don't care. It's just sad. Like I don't know. Like this just when I thought I couldn't be more disappointed in Blizzard, they come out and they do stuff like this, and I'm just like, dude, like you make a ton of money over there. Like you couldn't have like met them halfway or something. Like, and we don't know the full terms of the agreement. We just kind of know what's been leaked and what's been told and stuff. But there is a certain level of logic that you can put to this and realize that something on Blizzard's side is not right, and NetEase wouldn't have given that up unless it was really unfavorable, because they make a lot of money from it too. And regardless of if they're going to make their own MMO, if they're going to steal assets, if they're that's still money they have to put into it to make that. And while they may eventually get returns off of that, it's this was in place. Like the hard part was done for this. Like they were just milking the cow at that point. So for it to be so bad that they were just like, no, we don't want any other part of it, really is like a huge red flag to me. Um, as a whole, like we can talk about how it affects Overwatch League teams and stuff when we know a little bit more, because like you said, we don't know how this affects the Chinese teams. Like we have rumored that they're going to play in Korea. Okay, but are they allowed to play Chinese players and move them to Korea? Because that gets a little murky, because China's government is very hands on in a lot of stuff. So in this, if this is as bad as it looks, this could be something where they're like, no, we're not going to let them do that. Like, these teams will go get Korean players, or these teams will, get bottom barrel. We'll send like the worst over, kind of thing. Like we'll meet the contractual agreement, so there's no breach of contract, but do the bare minimum, which is not good for anybody. And but we don't know. So this is sad. And the last time this happened, Blizzard games were at least allowed to still be played. Like they just didn't get any updates. Like they
Mhm.
mentioned, like they were on Burning Crusade for like an extra year and a half, for World of Warcraft. Um, but this time, like they're shutting it all down. They implemented a thing. I think it went live today, where like you can back up your game save files locally. So that's just more work that has to be done. Like you have to come in and do systems that allow you to upload stuff from local files, which in software development is a big no-no, because that can cause a whole lot of other issues. Like you think botting and cheating is bad in China now. Let them have all their local files and figure out how to break into them, give themselves a whole bunch of gold, and then re-upload them. Because you're going to have to find software, and you're going to have to create software to do all the checks. Like, okay, well, the last time we saw this character, he had 700 gold, but now he has 370 million gold. That's stuff you have to write. That's checks you have to do. Same thing with Overwatch. Like, oh well, they had 7 million Overwatch coins now. Like, well, okay, that doesn't seem right. Like, it
Yeah,
the
that would have taken you 92 years.
90 that's not even close, Totem. Like, if you
I,
want the math, no, but 92 years for the first 100 million.
oh yeah.
But yeah, it's I don't know, this whole NetEase thing, it just keeps getting worse and worse. And I did like the wording where they're like, NetEase said no to our extension. Well, yeah, because you basically walked up to them, crapped on their lawn, and been like, hey, can I sleep in your bedroom for 6 months? Like,
Mhm.
no. They're like, we don't want anything to do with you at this point. Get out of here.
Mhm.
We'll make our own MMO with
Yeah, then
blackjack
they
and
flung,
hookers.
then they flung it back at them.
Yeah,
You know.
exactly. So, yeah, this is such a like a huge developing story, and it service ends in 3 days, 2 days at this point for them. So, um, it's sad, but I'm curious to see what happens with like the Overwatch League teams.
Yep, for sure. Now, speaking of the Overwatch League, the other big news bit
Dun
came
dun
out
dun.
from Jake and Wolf, who sent out this breaking news tweet, stating that the majority of Overwatch League teams have hired a British law firm to collectively bargain against Activision Blizzard amid growing frustrations around operation costs, lackluster viewership, and a distinct lack of a path to profitability. Um, uh, I honestly don't even
Ouch.
know where to begin. Okay, let's. I'll go through the tweet thread really quick. Saying some teams have spent more than $16 million in franchise fees and operation costs since buying into the league in 2017. And the league has zero sponsors or media rights deal after, as I mentioned, the expiration of its deal with YouTube. Obviously, with the lack of sponsors, there were a lot of other factors in play that led to that because of all the shit going on with Activision Blizzard, amid all of
Hmm.
the all of the SA going on. And obviously, like we only had like one major sponsor for the Overwatch League last season, in regards to Butterfingers. As much as we love to meme about Butterfingers with the Overwatch League, that was the sole sponsor
And they
at
were
that
only for
point in
the
time.
playoffs.
Hmm.
I was watching Flats, and I never knew this, but Flats was actually part of the Boston Uprising organization, like part of the org. I knew he was like a streamer for the Mayhem and stuff like that
Hmm.
for a couple of years, but I didn't know he was actually in the Boston org during the first initial couple seasons. And he kind of was like, yeah, this has always been a huge money sink, and I don't know, like, hey, we'll go through the points. Go through the points, and
Yeah, so so outside of that, I said no personal slight to the Outlaws either, but a $1.4 million in revenue is extremely pitiful. The team's COO just told the Houston Chronicle that's about what they made in 2022. I know one person, small businesses with higher revenue. Now, as I mentioned, like the Outlaws, from what we have seen and heard, obviously one of the largest fan bases in the Overwatch League. And I look at that number in revenue, and immediately I just think of the initial buy-in cost to like get into the league, because obviously at the time that they they wanted to go big, but it felt like there wasn't the infrastructure in place, and now it's just like we're constantly just throwing money in it because it has been a money sink up to this point, and there's no clear direction currently of how to keep your head above water. But to see a 1.4 million like actually listed, and I'm like, oh fuck, like, and that's one of the biggest fan bases in the league. Like, how many teams out there aren't even above 1 million? Because I would care to guess
most.
it's probably three-fourths of the league would be
Oh,
would
easily.
be would be a safe estimate.
I think you have L.A. Gladiators, Houston Outlaws, Dallas Fuel, San Francisco Shock. Like
Mhm.
those would be like the four teams that I would peg are are making above $1 million. Um, I can like it just it makes a lot more sense. It puts in a lot of context to like when I got to talk to the justice leadership, because they were itching to get money back. Like,
Mhm.
and one of the things Flats brought up is like apparently like homestands, um, were, because he was part of the process. Homestands were, we always thought like that is the point where they're going to make their money back. Like that is their cash cow. Like that is their big upswing, and then they'll ride that, with the rest of the bargaining agreements, like the collective league agreements through sponsorships and stuff. But he said that even then, like, because he was part of the season 3 planning process before, pandemic, like all the homestands were operating at a huge loss because they couldn't sell tickets for a amount of money that they would make money off of. They said, because he said because the target audience is like 18 and under, nobody 18 and under has any money, and he said even your college students are broke, so you had to peg tickets at like $40 to $50 was like the sweet spot, and then you could upsell packages to a couple of like the hardcore fans like us and like other podcasts who really want the better packages. But uh, even merch sales weren't doing good. He said the return on merch sales was really bad back then, and we do know some things have changed since then with merch sales. Like Blizzard has loosened its grip on merch sales a little bit, which he said he can't talk to because that was after he left. Um, but he did mention that as well. Um, but the path to profitability is important, because I hate to say it, but I feel like this all goes back to Nate and Answer. Like I feel like Nate talked this huge league up, talked like this, NFL style. Like it, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the XFL, either version, because
Mhm.
I didn't know it was coming back. But it seems like it's going to fail again. Um, but like it seems like it was pitched as this grandiose idea, like we're going to be this huge competitor, we're going to have so many people watching us, we're going to do all this, we have great aspirations. Okay, well, how are you going to do that
Mhm.
uh with lights and cameras? Like I don't know, like I feel like Blizzard has shot themselves in the foot this whole process. And I've talked about, like, if you watch the whole podcast, like, I've always tried to be positive, like painted in a positive light, but I've definitely called them out along the years of like stupid shit they've done. Um, Sorry, YouTube. But like the YouTube deal is a big one. Like even Flats brought this up, and we've talked about it on the show. Like season 2 was like peak Overwatch viewership for Overwatch
Mhm.
League. You can argue about metas, you could argue about the game, but the actual viewership experience in season 2 was phenomenal. If you paid the $15, you got a bunch of dumb Twitch stuff, but you also got to watch every POV you wanted. You could go to any
Mhm.
spectator cam you wanted. You could do anything like that. Like that was like peak esports viewership. And then they were like, well, YouTube's going to give us more money, so we're going to throw all that away. Like, okay, that helps in the short term, but it doesn't help in the long term. Like the point is you're supposed to grow this league so that it becomes profitable, but you just kept cashing out and cashing out and cashing out and taking shortcuts, and it led to where they are now. Like they've already cut um, payments. Like he mentions in here that they after COVID, everybody took out PPE loans, um, and after that, they basically knocked everybody's payments down to the same payment level, which
Mhm.
worked out really well for the season 2 teams because the season 2 teams had like a 50 to 100% higher buy-in than the season 1 teams. So their payments were much higher than the season 1 teams, which were already astronomical because it was at $20 million. But they knocked it all down and said, okay, everybody owes the same thing. We'll forgive it. Just pay this much. And then, at this point, they say most teams owe around like $6 to $7 million, which for some of these teams is a lot of money, but for most of these teams, that is not a lot of money. Like that is what NRG sneezes out on a weekend, through various things. So the fact that they're worried about that. It's weird to call $1 million, $7 million a small amount of money, but that small amount of money in a business sense is concerning
Mhm.
because that basically just doubles down on how low these profit margins are. um, and I hate to say it, but I feel like it's Blizzard's fault. Like they took the shortcuts. They didn't want to grow this. Like if you want to come out and pitch this grandiose idea, sure, but you need to like put a huge asterisk on that of like this is where we will be in 5 years. Obviously, we didn't know about the pandemic, we didn't know about things changing, but this is where we want to be in 5 years. Like you can set the buy-ins, reasonably high, but even when we started the show, we were like $20 million seems excessive. Like
Mhm.
even you, me, and Slambo were like, that seems like a lot. Um, and the funny thing is, like, he goes on to talk about it. The operating costs for Overwatch League is much lower than any other esports league right now, except for maybe
That is true.
CDL. So I don't know, like this, like when I read the headline, I was like, rutro, like
Yeah.
it was bad. And the more I read, and the more I hear, like people, like I said, Flats, and other people talk about it, it does not look good. Like this just reinforces kind of like what you said earlier, is there's probably a lot of teams looking to get out. So
Mhm.
this may be the last season we see Overwatch League as it currently is. And I feel like there's going to be like a big restructuring, going into like the 2024 season, if there is a league at all. But
Wow.
hopefully they restructure it, do a little more open, learn from their mistakes, which Blizzard is admittedly not great at, and see how the market has changed, because I do think there's a lot of interest there. I do think Overwatch has the capability to be um, a I don't want to say top tier esports, because even as someone who knows Overwatch in and out, does videos on Overwatch, talks about Overwatch, it's really freaking hard to watch. Like
Mhm.
it's hard to know what's going on. And Nikki has like said multiple times, like I'd love to watch it with you, but I don't know what the is going on. So
Mhm.
it's just not enjoyable to me. Whereas like at least like StarCraft or even League of Legends, like I don't play League of Legends.
Mhm.
I know basic mechanics, but I can watch League of Legends and say like, oh well, that was a freaking amazing play. Faker just killed 5 people, and there's only 5 people, and I got to watch how he did it. Whereas like in Overwatch, you can't do that. Like sure, you get like the Great Bamboozle, which is like a rare like setup play where you get to see like the full setup and stuff like that. But that happened like what, once or twice over 5 years. Other than that, it's just like chaos, pure chaos. So this this is bad. I thought about it all day, because you posted the notes earlier, but I kind of knew we were talking about this this week. I've been thinking about it like all day, like how can I spin this to be somewhat positive, but I can't. Like
Yeah.
this is just a oh who pooped in my pants moment. Like I don't know.
Yeah, and when you're looking at this and you're talking about operating costs, and obviously there's a lot of teams that were operating at above $1 million each year to maintain teams at this point. And then you're looking at revenue, and what a team like the Houston Outlaws is pulling, and you're not too much higher than what the operating cost actually is. And it just thinking, it's like, well, look at how long it took them to get to that point,
Hmm.
just to be above water in regards just to the operating costs alone. That's not even factoring in contracts and all of that. But it's like it really paints a picture of the vast majority of the league or the teams are operating at a loss, and it's a lot more dire in some cases compared to others because of how big of a fan base they have. Obviously, they're as you mentioned, you got like your four that we consider to be like at the top, but there's a lot of teams that maybe don't have that same threshold to pull from. Obviously, there are teams that kind of like are more in like the meme category, so it's like it's really hard to like gauge where some of like these other teams are. But for the most part, if it's just like it's very safe to like blanket statement, like yeah, the vast majority of the league not above water in regards to operating costs. And you realize like, yeah, it's like, hey, like we can help you out a little bit, but all these teams are wanting their money back.
Hmm.
And it's just like, oh man, like you're just grimacing at just the thought of it. And this is going to be something that we're going to have to keep our eyes on, because the price points to get into the league, and knowing like how much further along it seems like, okay, like we don't really know when we are to turn a profit. So at that point, that discussion is going to happen more and more frequently, like, hey, like is it time that we cut ties with the Overwatch League? Like what's going to happen?
Hmm.
What I thought was interesting about this is for like this collective uh, bargaining agreement, a lot of people turn to Overactive Media, who are the group behind the Toronto Defiant,
Right.
to kind of like steer this in the right direction to see, um, what can be done about this. And this is going to be a development story, probably throughout the seasons. But it's just like, man, like obviously you can't really, have figured out like, oh yeah, obviously we're gonna have like a global pandemic, and these live events are gonna be a thing of the past. And obviously, like things have loosened up. We have seen the return of some of these events
Hmm.
this past year, but it's like, man, like losing as many sponsors as the Overwatch League did really gutted the the opportunity at profitability for
Yep.
these teams, for the league as a whole. And it's just like we it's so hard to say like, yeah, for certain, like, okay, they're not going to get a big money deal for broadcast rights after they played ball with YouTube. you
Yeah.
know if they do return to Twitch, which probably will be the case, it's going to be at a fraction of the price that it was for the early
Hmm.
season. And sure, yeah, you might have the return of like the command center, and that helps to an extent, but like it's not going to be enough to keep your head above water in this case. So it's just like, without sponsors, it just looks super bleak. Like I don't know where else they can pull in this money from.
And I like my holdout was like the Microsoft deal, but even that's like so far up in the air at this point. Like it seems like multiple countries are moving to block that. Um, and that was kind of like my holdout for that could bring in sponsors back in, like you put the sign up under new management and people start coming back to at least check it out and see like, oh, okay, well, let's see what's going on now with Microsoft Overwatch and stuff like that. And but the in like I said with Butterfinger was only um during the playoffs. and they that seems really weird to me. Like they, I don't know, like maybe they just wanted to get in on like the Overwatch 2 craze, or I don't know. It seems very weird and very random. Um, but I I hope that they pick up a couple of smaller sponsors. Like, at this point, take what you can get, man. If you, dude, if Raid Shadow Legends and NordVPN's reaching out, like Keeps, like any of the stuff that'll take any sponsorship deal, like, dude, just take it, because any sponsor looks good, and that will help you get the bigger sponsors back. Like, you're not going to get Coca-Cola back, you're not going to get Cheez-Its back. Take some sponsorships. If you have to take Reese Pieces, take Reese Pieces. The Blizzard right now at this point in this collective bargaining agreement is at a huge disadvantage, because these teams have so much evidence against, like, look, here's all of our financial statements. Like, we have done above and beyond. Most of the teams have done above and beyond what we needed to, and we are not making any money. And they can point back and say, like, Blizzard failed to update the game for 3 years. Blizzard screwed us in marketing, and sorry, it's late, so my brain's starting to die. Marketing and apparel prices initially, like, we had to bargain for that, and even that's not in a good spot. Blizzard is very, very hands-on in terms of what kind of material they can put out, like in terms of just YouTube material, stuff like that. Like, co-streaming was a big thing, like nobody could ever do. And that hurt viewership, because Blizzard was like, we want everybody, all the viewership in one spot. Whereas every other esport has shown, like, if you do co-streaming, sure, not everybody's going to be watching the main channel, but having 100,000 people watch the main channel and 50,000 people watch Shroud is better than 105,000 people watching the main channel. Like, that's just, it's just basic math. Like, they have all this evidence on how Blizzard has repeatedly shot themselves in the foot, like, with this league. The YouTube deal is they could use that against them and be like, YouTube, while they offered more money up front, is an inferior product when it comes to live streaming things, and especially at the time. Like, YouTube has, I mean, we're streaming on YouTube right now, but YouTube has closed the gap for sure. But at the time of that agreement, absolutely not. Like, it was, that was like unheard of. I remember us calling it out on the show, like, okay, well, they went to YouTube. That's weird. Like,
Yeah, and there were a ton of growing pains there too. And
right.
yeah, like, year over year, we did see growth in regards to the viewership. I mean, last postseason, prime example of that. It was like the highest viewership we've seen in a very long time for the league. But that wasn't like an overnight thing. Like, it felt like you're really having to inch and claw your way just to get to that point.
And even that wasn't where it should have been, because the the freaking game pre-launched, released, it should have been much higher, because that was like peak hype, like,
Right.
for Overwatch 2. It could have been so much higher had they, not restricted things to YouTube. And, Flats said this, and I thought this was really interesting, because they did loosen up on the co-streaming, right? But they said after you co-streamed it live, you couldn't make any content from it. Like, you couldn't post that content on YouTube. So Flats is like, dude, I wanted to do all these videos, like breakdowns of like the co-stream and stuff, and do stuff like that. And he was like, I couldn't, like, I wasn't allowed to. And he's like, and he said their reasoning was, well, people can post it on other platforms, and that would be against our YouTube agreement. And I'm like, well, personally, I was like, that's stupid. That's copyright. Like, that's the same thing as stealing anybody's stuff and posting it on other platforms. And then Flat said the same thing. Like, dude, then you just copyright strike them. Like, it's like, but it definitely seems like Blizzard has been hands-on in all the wrong ways. Like, they need to move their hands and put it on the league and say, like, okay, we're gonna mold you into this league of something that people want to watch. and not touch the community. Like, let the community grow. Like, let people co-stream. Let people make content on the league and stuff like that. Like, we should have a replay viewer at this point. It shouldn't just be Custa that's
Hmm.
allowed to play with the replay viewer. Like, I'd love to do pro play breakdowns and be like, wow, that shot was amazing. Like, I didn't see that during the podcast, which we could with the command center. But I don't know. Like, they have so much ammo against Blizzard. Like, Blizzard needs to have something up their sleeve. Like, oh, when Microsoft takes over this deal, like, we have like 7 sponsors lined up. We have all this cool stuff lined up. Like, we have, we're bringing back the Blizzard Arena, so homestands are going to be a thing. Or we'll host homestands and eat some of that cost for you, so you guys can focus on selling, $7 sodas and $13 popcorns and whatever movie theaters do to make money. Like there's a lot of stuff Blizzard could do that obviously is going to cost money, so they don't want to do it. That could help these teams out and make them a little more willing to stick with the league, because if this trajectory continues, as soon as these teams can, they're going to bail. Like, I can tell you, LA Valiant would have bailed like 3 years ago. Vancouver Titans would have bailed after year one. Stuff like Paris Eternal probably would have bailed at this point. So, and if you're not doing stuff to be like, well, I know things have been bad, but we have a plan, and here's what we're going to do, which, thinking about it, Blizzard's never been really good at that. So I don't know why I'm even offering it.
Hmm.
But yeah, this is something we're going to have to keep an eye on. And this is, as I say to the kids, which I've never said to the kids, this is bad news bears.
Well, yeah, and this is also Blizzard related. I remember reading the Hearthstone esports update for the year, and oof, oh man, like let me just tell you really quick the gist of that. Basically, they are sticking to like, oh yeah, like we're gonna instill having like the ladder grind determining who plays at Masters and whatnot. But oh yeah, even if you win Masters, you don't get anything.
But then that's not an esport. That's just a that's
Exactly.
just a
And
hobby you take too seriously.
everyone in that Twitter thread is like, holy shit. Like
Oh,
our
so
expectations were low, but like
so the
jeez,
heroes of the stormed it. They were basically
basically,
like, "This is an esport." Just kidding. No, it's not. We're pulling all the funding,
yeah,
and we're not doing anything.
yeah. Yeah, basically, and I'm like, oh man, like it's just one thing after another.
Yeah, it's
So it's like we've had all this talk about NetEase and everything going on with China, and then we just have all of this. We just need to be at ease, really. At the end
yeah.
of the day, and right now, it's just like we can't really be in that state.
Uh, with that, starting next week, we will be transitioning to Valorant League Network, talking about all the Valorant-y things, like the.
Yeah. We'll talk about a game that we don't play. Wait a minute.
That's what we do now. That's what we've done for 3 years. No, I'm just kidding. I actually play Valorant occasionally. I will say I've played Valorant more in the past 2 weeks than I have Overwatch. And I've played Fortnite more than that. But I've played Elden Ring the most. And that's why I hate myself.
Even though it's not a direct competitor.
Yeah. Look, if somebody's gonna, I can't even say it on YouTube anymore, so I'm not going to. Like, if somebody's gonna screw me, at least it's gonna be the computer, and then I can just get mad at myself, rather than some rando.
There you go.
There we go. So, well, I think I don't have anything more to rant about. I think that's enough for tonight.
Absolutely. So yeah, well, if there's more developments on this collective bargaining agreement, because obviously that's a very big topic, and obviously there could be some pretty big fallout in regards to how exactly that is going to pan out. But yeah, we'll let you guys know on that front. But in the meantime, that will do it for us here tonight on Heroes Never Die. If you guys are looking to keep in touch with us, I can reach us via email at hndoverwatch@gmail.com. You can also find us over on Twitter at hndoverwatch. All of our video content is available on our YouTube, which is at Overwatch League Network, or at HND Overwatch. You can also find us. And then, of course, as always, you can find us chilling over on our community Discord at discord.me/OWLN show. Now, outside of that, of course, all of our hosts are also available on social media. You can find Ramses at Ramses_GG. You can find myself at Terminally Drunk, and Spyder. Where can the listeners reach you there?
You can find me at Spyder Gaming or at _Spyder Gaming on Twitter, but Discord's the best way to get a hold of me. I check that way more often. YouTube Shorts should come back next week. It's just been a bad couple weeks at work. Normally I edit them in the morning, after I do my work stuff, but I haven't had a chance. And then by the afternoon, I'm like, dude, I just want to play like Raft or something and chill out or play with the kids or something. So I do have some shorts lined up. I just need to put a couple of finishing touches on them, so they'll probably start popping up back in your feed, probably early next week. But I have about 7 or 8 of them lined up already. So
if we had the replay viewer, like, one of the content things I've always wanted to do is like, hey, this looks like a cool positioning that I've seen in the Overwatch League. Let's see how it works in gold.
Yeah, exactly. I'd love to take the replay viewer and do like recreate like certain plays, like try to recreate certain plays in game, but we don't. So, maybe this season. I did. Custa talks about it occasionally, and on his stream, he did say that he is actively trying to push for the replay viewer to go out to the masses. So, but who knows? Like we don't know. We don't even know when the league starts at this point. So I'm not holding my breath.
Absolutely. But yeah, I would love to just do like expectations versus reality. And who knows at this point, you can, it's a direct comparison to what was promised for the Overwatch League.
Yep.
They were expecting, major profits, organic growth year to year. And instead, you got teams operating at 1 million costs and 80% of the league, not even above that in revenue.
Hey, the good news is my Dallas Cowboys stuff finally shipped, or not Dallas Cowboys, my Dallas Fuel stuff finally shipped. So I'll finally have that World Championship gear. I might have it just in time to watch the league burn around me. So,
and on that front, that will do it for us. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you maybe next week. If there's stuff, we'll see.